Well, hello and welcome to another painting class with me, your host, Paige. I'm the Chief Pixel Pusher and Paintbrusher over here at Gumption, and tonight we're actually going to be painting an eye. I know it might seem random, but it might be a little bit of fun, so if you're ready to try your hand at painting an eye, stick around and I'm going to show you how I paint mine. Let's see. We have Laurel here tonight. So hi, Laurel. It's nice to see you here tonight, and I hope you enjoyed tonight's painting. If you're here in live with me tonight, just say hello in chat. We like to know who's here and just like to be able to say hi. All right. It looks like we can. So again, tonight we're painting an eye. Tonight's class probably will take about an hour. And the reference for this imagery, there's actually a link in the chat. There's no tracing for this. I'm actually going to be drawing with you. So you don't need to trace anything tonight. And tonight's colors, these are maybe some colors that we'll be using, but we're going to be using some peachy tones. We're going to be using probably a green, but truly you can make your color of your iris any color that you want to. So whatever floats your boat. But I'll be using a turquoise or a cobalt teal tonight for my eye color. And we'll be using white gouache. If you don't have white gouache, maybe you have a white crayon or a white colored pencil or a gel pen. That'll work just fine too. So if you find that you have any questions, please throw them in chat for me and I can answer them as we go along. And all right, I think we can switch cameras here. So I'm going to quickly switch to my camera. Here we go. All right, let me just make one adjustment here and we will get rolling. Okay, so as you can see, this is what we are going to be painting tonight. Again, if you want to access that reference image, this is our reference image. Kind of just loosely using this to create our eyeball tonight. And of course, if you want, you can include your eyebrow. I did 2 paintings here. I'll just show you. I wasn't really super happy with this first painting. So on my second one, I just didn't include my eyebrow, but you can if you want to. All right, so first and foremost, you're going to need a pencil. And I'm just going to sketch out my eyeball here real quick, and you can sketch along with me. So I have my kneaded eraser and my pencil. And really, an eye, most of the time, you can kind of start with an almond shape or a football shape, kind of. And so I'm just loosely kind of moving my arm here, drawing this eye. Now we have this little area here, so we just can include that. This person's eye, you really see that. And the difference with this eye is it kind of curves up and around here. And the one thing that we really want to keep in mind when we are drawing eyes is they are really a circle. So this is going to be the side of an eye. And then the eyelid, you know, it kind of wraps around this eyeball. So when we're drawing the eye, we have to make sure that we keep in mind that there's actually like a little golf ball in there, which has its own kind of shading that affects it too. And this eyelid, the eyelid hangs over the eye. Can you see that? Maybe we'll zoom in here a little bit. It hangs over the eye and it creates a shadow all on its own. So we have to remember we're going to be drawing in this lid kind of area, and there's also going to be, well, here's the lid or lip of the lid that we'll also be painting in. But first, start with this almond shape. We have a lid that this lid sort of wraps around here and it flattens out. curves around here. So I'll darken this up for you. And the lashes kind of come off, and we'll kind of discuss lashes later, but let's see. So then this part, as you can see, it kind of wraps around the eyeball itself. So it's coming up and kind of wrapping around, and you can see this lip of this lower lid. Again, if you need the reference image for this, just to help you along, you can find it in chat there or in the description below, depending on where you're tuning in from. And if you're tuning in, let me know that you're here. So this kind of flattens out here. I'm just going to kind of lighten this up a bit. Okay, and then we have the iris itself, which is kind of off center for this particular image. And so you have to remember the iris is a circle. So when I'm looking at reference imagery, I'm kind of trying to figure out where the circle kind of cuts in. Sometimes if your eye looks off, that's kind of why. So we can see this is kind of cutting in, and it can help to just draw the whole iris. Now I can tell as I'm looking at my reference image that this is too far over. I have a lot more kind of negative space here than I do here. No problem. I can scooch that over really quickly with my eraser here. I'm just going to scooch it over. Thanks for tuning in with me. I've been so kind of busy this week. My announcement went out a little bit late today, and I'm glad that you're able to join me. So, and then of course we have this pupil in the center of the iris. So I'll just kind of get that in there. And then I kind of create this curve here where the corner of your eye is. And then just kind of mark, because the eye is not just this almond shape, there's a little more to it. So I always try to include kind of what's around it. Underneath the eye oftentimes is in shadow because it's faced away from the light a little bit. So that looks pretty good. I think that's going to work for our start. And then what I will do with my eraser to kind of lighten it up a little bit is I kind of take my eraser back and forth and just roll it kind of over my sketch here. So it almost disappears, but I can kind of see it here still. But now we'll need to mix our colors. So I'm just going to share with you some colors that I have that are pre-mixed colors, and then we'll try to repeat this color by mixing. So you could see these are my Jaune. Well, this is actually a gouache that I made where I'm missing one, but this is a Jaune Brilliant. I want to say I think this is 2. And then this is Bread from my Beam Paints, and this is Morning Peach. And they all kind of can help create this peachy tone here, but we'll try to make our own peachy tone by making a really light orange color. So I'm going to take, I have a kind of a medium pyrrole red. It's pretty vibrant. Kind of dilute it down a little bit. And then I'm going to take some Hansa yellow. We'll see what we can get here. Well, look at that. That's a nice kind of orangey, peachy color. I might actually create another color here. Same colors, maybe a little less red, a little more kind of yellowy color. Just kind of see. And then we'll kind of, what we're going to do is we're going to do the area around the eye. So I'm going to do, we'll see how dark that is. If you find yours is too dark, get your paper towel out. I'm going to do the lid area here, that edge, and kind of all around the eye. And maybe fade it out here just a little. And then we can take our oranger color, or our more peachy color, because this is real soft. Take it and kind of tap it in here underneath and up on the lid. We'll also probably use some purples here. So if you have a pre-mixed purple or you want to mix your purple, I'll mix it with you tonight so you can have that experience. And I'm also not afraid to use any pinks because you know opera pink is definitely one of my favorite colors. So while this is still wet, you could even introduce, I'm going to just tap this a little bit. Introduce a little bit of pink into these areas. All right, I got a thumbs up in Facebook. Thank you. I'm glad that you are following along with me. And of course, this part of the eye is in shadow in our image, but oftentimes we have kind of a darker area here. You can just soften that by wetting your brush, tapping off the excess on your paper towel, and just softening that edge there. So far I'm liking this. It's really soft and pretty. We'll get a little bit, I'm going to mix a purple here. I'm going to zoom out. There we go. And get a little ultramarine blue. That's a lot of an ultra blue. Try to water it down here. And then use my alizarin crimson. And you can create a really nice, vibrant purple here. I'm going to tap a little here and add some water so it's not too much. And I can just run along this top lid here and accentuate this curve a little bit. You can soften those edges a little. Whoops, let's see. So I got into an area I didn't really want to get into, so I'm just going to tap that out. Okay. And then I think I'm going to put a little bit of this purple up kind of in this corner area and curve around, because in this particular image we kind of have that a little bit. Kind of fade it out there. So this is starting to give it some real shape. I'm going to do the same thing over here. Just kind of soften the edge here. And actually I got a little too close here, so I'm going to lift some of this color with at my brush that I just dried off. And not only it kind of softens that edge, but also lightens it here. Okay, so for now, I think that's all right because we're kind of just laying down our local or base color, and we might be switching brushes to a smaller brush here. So I have this one. I don't know what size that is. We'll just guess and say it is maybe a 2. I'm not sure. If I want to add, if you look at this image, and I'm going to show you, you can see how we have this lip right here that's in shadow where your eyelashes, there's a ridge there for your eyelashes. So I'm just going to add a little bit of darker pigment here to kind of show that ridge. And then we're going to get into the inside of the eye. So I'm probably going to use this kind of orangey peachy color that I made. And I'm just going to run it along this ridge. So I highly recommend that when you have the opportunity to do eyes or practice them, there's a lot to them, right? So kind of fun to practice and explore, because I think there's more to them than we often think about. Okay, so I might need to let that dry for just a second there so I don't make a mess. How are you guys doing as far as being able to, am I moving too fast for you? I guess that's the question. I'm going to let this dry for a minute and maybe let you catch up. Whenever I paint something, it is like whenever I'm doing a painting, it's so weird sometimes not to paint the eyes in. Whatever you're painting looks kind of wild until you put a pigment in the iris. And so if you're painting a person and you find that you are struggling with making it look real, sometimes just putting the pigment in the eye is going to help you make it look good. Okay, see, it's still kind of, looks like it's kind of dry. Okay, so I'm just going to lay down. I'm going to get some of this cobalt teal, and you can truly use any color you want for the iris. My eye is not going to look exactly like this image that we're using for reference. And let's see, what kind of brush do I want to use? I'm going to use this one as a 4. This is a beam brush, but it's a good size. As you can see, it's kind of small, but not too small. So I'm going to take my cobalt and I'm going to just cover the whole iris with this. And then if you want to add a little bit more pigment, you can tap it in here at the top. Maybe even curve it around here. I feel like, well, we're just going to work with that, see what we can get from that. So I'm going to turn on my hair dryer and dry this. And you guys can keep painting here. I'm going to mute myself. Okay. Let's see. Okay. So I also need to get another palette here. Move some of this out of the way. Okay. Kind of a tight squeeze here. Kind of scoot this over maybe a little bit. So it doesn't look like much right now, but what we're going to do is we're going to shape this eyeball. And I'm just going to bring this over to kind of show you. So you can see we have the shadow that is in the eyeball. And this is kind of looking turquoise and blue. We're going to use ultramarine blue for our shading. But you'll notice that an eyeball just isn't just white and whatever color the iris is. There's a lot more to it. We have some pinks down in here. And, you know, kind of where an eye might have some bloodshotness, you know, you're going to have some pinks. And then we have the shadow that's from this top lid. And so we're going to include that shadow as well. So I'm going to mix up some ultramarine blue, and it's going to be really light. It's going to be lighter than this. Just going to add more and more water. Sometimes it's nice to have a little test strip of paper as you are painting along, so you can kind of, I think this is really important, especially for beginners actually, because one of the troubles that I've seen the beginners really struggle with is that water paint ratio. And so if you have a little test paper, you can see what you're getting. I think you'll be a lot more happy with the end result. And then I'm going to come in and I'm going to, I may need a little bit smaller brush, but I'm going to lay down the pigment here. And it's going to kind of curve around here. I'm going to switch out my brush. And just soften these edges and kind of bring it around here. We might have to layer a little bit. But you can see how this starts really giving it sort of dimension. And so I might tap in a little bit more blue up here and in the corner because it's especially dark there. And then we will go over the top of this cobalt teal, but for now we're just kind of softly, delicately shaping this eye. All right, so kind of while this is drying, we can also take our pink, and you can truly use any pink that you want to. Of course, you know, I love this, this opera pink, but you can use a coral, quinacridone coral, or even a alizarin crimson. And I'm just going to put in this pink that is in this corner of this eye. We'll want to, I mean, that looks pretty. Let's see, we'll switch this over. It looks pretty light. You could add even more. Dab it in the corner there. And then while I have this, I think I'm going to put a little bit of this pink along this lid or lip of this lid. Now you can see we're getting some dimension. Okay, I'm going to zoom out here. Switch this around. Okay, so it's starting to look like something. Now we definitely need to kind of darken some of these areas and put in this lid. So what we can do now is I'm actually going to mix up my cobalt teal, but I'm going to add a little bit of a darker pigment. So if you have a Payne's gray or some kind of darker color, like a black, maybe even, you can darken this up. We're just looking to darken this area here in the eye. You could actually just use a Payne's gray too if you wanted over the whole thing. But I kind of like to massage the eye, so to speak, to blend it a little. So I'm just going to soften this edge here. Maybe have to add some more pigment in here. Kind of include this. What would be the iris? So that's pretty good for now. So now I think we can let this dry a little bit and we can go into our eyelid, and we just need a darker color to do this eyelid area line. I have a really narrow brush because this is so small, so you can see how tiny that is. If you have a brush that's sort of in this kind of shape with a point, has a pretty good point on it, you can use that too for your eyelid. And depending on how big you have created your eye, you know, kind of depends on how big the brush is that you'll use. And we'll I'm going to mix this kind of with my purpley color because we want it to be dark enough to be able to see. So that sort of gives us that lid. And then what we can do here is use the same color. Kind of lost this tone here in line for this eyelid, so you can kind of use a narrow brush to kind of get your shape of your eye in. We're going to do lashes, but you could actually run this all the way over. We want to soften this line really when we do our lashes, but I'm just going to kind of put it in there so you can see it a little bit better. Let's scoot this over. I'm also going to define this line here. Be a very narrow line, but it kind of defines this around the eye. You could also use kind of a red, this pinky red color, because we have this kind of pink area too. And we can also use this color to kind of define this area. You could also use a red here, but you'll see kind of this has a mixture of kind of yellow and red and white. There's always kind of a highlight that happens in there. Okay. So now we have some, we have some contrast here, and we need a little bit more to make this eye start coming alive. Oops. Let me zoom out here. So now we have our basic eye kind of set up, and now you can start building upon this. So I can take my peachy color and run it back under here. To create this under eye area. Probably don't want to get too crazy with that, right? We don't want our person to look like they have too big of bags. Maybe. Ooh. But you can kind of soften it out. We can also kind of define this area of the lid. So when you look at your reference image, you know, you can see all kinds of colors that are in this lid that help shape it, because it's not just a line. It's just a series of values and that create what we see here. So I kind of note where we're going to have some light. We'll have light here. We have some light up here. We definitely have kind of light along here, the lash line. And again, I'll kind of run up here where we have this tone. I feel like I need to get a little bit more of an intense peachy color here. So we'll mix some more of it. Again, this is Hansa yellow, and this is a pyrrole red color. Now that's pretty orange, so I may need to dilute it out a little bit more and get kind of that nice. You could even add a little pink to it, actually, to really get a nice just run it up here. And I'm just going to run it along this lash line too. This will become darker later, but okay. So what we can do now is we can add an even darker kind of shadow line here under this top lid. And I like to do this soft kind of graduated color here, as you can see, because it's really nice and soft, and really normally it would be that. It's not just dark all the time. So we subtly layer our colors. So I'm mixing this soda-like color. This is a Payne's gray type of color. And we'll kind of see what this looks like. I'm using a number 4 brush. All right, and then what I'll do is I can soften this edge by dipping my brush in some water and kind of bringing that pigment down. You might even feel like you need a little bit more. So while this is wet, you could actually, that is a little too much, but you could bring in some more pigment until you have kind of just what you want there. So I'm going to soften this again. If you need to lift a little bit of color, you just take your brush and you wipe it. I can kind of scrub some of that out and then lift it. And I may have taken too much, so. Okay. Now I feel kind of like it took some of my pigment away. but I suppose we can add it in. So I'm going to dry this really quickly so I can get it set, and then I will be right back. So you can see it really kind of, I'm going to zoom in here so you can kind of see. So it took a lot of my pigment out, and sometimes, you know, that can happen, especially with cobalt teal. It kind of moves around sometimes. So let's see here. Turn this off. So I may have to go back in there and repair that. And I'm not loving this dark area, but I can fix that too just by scrubbing and lifting here. So I have my paper towel. Okay, let's zoom out. There we go. Okay, so I think what will help also is if we can put an iris in here. So I'm going to use a more concentrated version of my Sodalite or Payne's Gray. You can use black if you have black, or you can use your dark purple if you really want to. And I can kind of paint in this pupil, that's what I mean, not iris, but the pupil. And once you add your highlights, oftentimes that really kind of makes it come alive. And I might have to do a little repair up here. Kind of see how it goes. When I did my example, I used a turquoise here. Let's see, we can make it even darker. So that might work for now. Kind of put in our... Okay. And then you can kind of... So we'll let that dry. We'll continue adding some of our peachy tones here. Let's see. Some peachy tones to the lid, the upper portion of the eye. Okay. Truthfully, I'm surprised my cats aren't in here making a bunch of noise. They always keep Zoom meetings really interesting and live streams. So you can kind of see this eye is starting to come alive. Now, if you have access to chat and you're able to to type in chat. Let me know how you're doing. Okay. And I just kind of have fun. This is kind of a fun image because it has lots of, when you really look at it, it has lots of kind of great color in it. Some pinks and peaches, and kind of one of my favorite things is to kind of just layer these colors and kind of, how do I describe it? Kind of scrub them in. But I'm kind of always looking, you know, if I'm using a reference image, kind of looking at that and seeing how light is coming into play. Okay, so now I think I can put in our lashes, and we'll just use, I'm not always a fan of the spindly lashes, and the image that I'm looking at kind of has them, and so sometimes it's unavoidable. But what I like to do first is just kind of softly, you know, go from a thin line to a thicker lash line here, kind of like eyeliner in a way. And these kind of dip off here. That might be a little too long, but just kind of create that dark area. And you can even soften this a little if you want. It's a little water. So you can take your very thin brush. This is a 20/0. Can you see that? I'm not even sure how you say that, but maybe you won't be able to see that. But you can see it does a really thin line. So you can kind of put in a little line here and there. And really, eyelashes are really interesting because they, like on this image, they come down in the front. So you'll have some that kind of, that's too much pigment, but a little too much water there, but kind of come down into the eye area, and then they kind of curl up. So it's always kind of fun to observe images and see how things really are. And if you lose your pigment here, you can just kind of add it back in. Of course, we have some lashes down below, so you could tap in some lashes. And you may even want to define this lower lash line, like I'm looking at that on the inside here. I've lost a little bit of this. This actually widens out a little bit. But we'll just keep rolling here. Let's see, we have a comment. Awesome. I love it. So Laurel says they're in the painting zone. So that really means that they are really concentrating and not, that's a good sign, I think. you're not where you're typing, you're painting. So if you find that your lid is it's narrowed out a little bit, you can scrub with a little bit of water and tap. These are just tools that I use all the time to correct anything that is kind of an issue that I have maybe fouled up or done something there. Okay, so we're doing pretty good for time. All right. Love it. Sometimes I'll put a little kind of wash of a line in. Okay, so now what we can do, what will really make these eyes come alive is the white that we use to bring the highlights in. Now, in this image, we had kind of some boxy highlights. I think I'm going to do something a little bit different for this eye up here. What do you think? Do you think I ought to darken this a little bit more? Well, we'll do our light highlights and see what it looks like. But we have to find the gouache first. Let's see. Okay, so what did I do with my gouache? Well, for those of you who might be new to the channel, this is what I actually use right now for using white in my painting. White watercolor, I just don't think is really the best option always. You want something a little bit more opaque, and this is more opaque. You can use, there is a white ink that you can use sometimes. You can use a colored pencil, and if you wanted to really jazz up your eyes, you could then approach this with colored pencils if you wanted. And just keep adding to it. That's always fun, and that's probably something I'd like to try on our channel a little bit more here. We do a lot of watercolor, but sometimes it's nice to add something new or different in there. The great thing about this gouache is that if you put it in a container, like one of these little containers, you can keep re-wetting it and reusing it. So that's kind of nice. So it saves you a little bit of money. I'm just going to put that there so you can see it. But tonight we'll use this wet, just kind of nice. And then you can kind of create your own dots or highlights there. Sometimes you'll have to apply more than once with this, and that's just part of this particular gouache that I'm using. I also sometimes like to put a little bit of white there in the corner of the eye. Let's zoom in a little bit. Because you have all these reflections and where light hits. And sometimes you'll have some white on the waterline as well. Because this is so light, you're not really going to be able to see that too much. But even here, this one, I could put a little white there. And you can continue to work it and rework it. I always kind of like to continue to add a little bit and see what colors that I can find within the eye. I may even try to go a little bit darker since we're just hanging out here with a turquoise color. That is the difference between cobalt teal and this turquoise color, is that this turquoise color is much, it's like the same color, but it is not opaque. It doesn't have granulation in the same way. And so we'll just kind of explore that since we're hanging out here. So you can see this color. This is this phthalo turquoise color. This is a core color. And just to show you the difference between the two, then you have this cobalt teal color that is much more opaque. It's like as if it had white chalk in it, which it doesn't, but that's kind of what it feels like. So we'll see what I can do here with this turquoise color. Now, I wouldn't always recommend doing this, but this is kind of bugging me, this eye, because I want it to be a little bit more, have a little more contrast. And not all the time, but sometimes you can kind of go around. You'll see eyes that kind of have a little bit darker around the eye, but see how that really helped this, I think, make it look a little bit better. I might even kind of bring it down here a little. I was working with the granulation of the cobalt teal, but it looked a little weird. All right, what do you think? I think that looks like an eye. Let's see. Oops. One thing I have been noticing lately is I'm not getting my brushes rinsed out good enough, and I'm getting different colors in my paint. So do better than I'm doing. And make sure to rinse out your brushes. So now is a great time for you, if you have questions for me, to throw those in chat or just say hello if you've been hanging out in this feed for a minute. I'm happy to answer them. Also, I'd love to hear any suggestions you might have for future classes that you'd like to see. I know that I'm sure my friend Colin would like to see some more environmental landscape kind of art, and definitely want to do some more of that. I think it's been a while. It's probably been a year since we've done rocks or anything kind of like that. So if there's something that you have a burning desire for, let me know. All right. Right on. Hey, Jan, it's so nice to see you here tonight. I miss seeing your face, and I'm so glad that you could tune in. So yeah, rocks, maybe rocks will be our next kind of class. Do something interesting that way. And great idea. I hope you are doing well, and maybe I will see you. Our Saturday market is starting here this coming week, and just be nice to get out of the house and get to see my friends hanging out at the market. So hopefully I get to see you too. All right, so Andy, my nephew, is asking for an African savanna landscape. I love it. So there are two great ideas that we can use moving forward. So cool. I love it. Thank you, Andy, for your suggestion too. All right, so I'm going to switch my camera around. And let's see if I can do that. Okay. Is it working? All right. There we go. Cool. Well, hey, I appreciate you guys tuning in. If you have any other comments, go ahead and throw them in chat before I let you go. This was a fun class, and I hope you learned something a little bit new about painting eyes. That's how I approach them in watercolor, and I go for that subtlety and then kind of go for the impact there. So, and I know we did a portrait here not too long ago, and that was a lot for a class, I think. But for those of you who were able to tune in and kind of do that with me, hopefully it made you less afraid of doing portraits. But one thing I want to be conscious of is not throwing too much at you, because I have a tendency to do that. And so I want to give you steps, good steps. So African Savannah rocks. All right. If you have any other suggestions, throw them in there. I need some fun music, I think, for this feed. Okay, well, it looks like I don't have any additional questions, but I have some thank yous that I need to cover. So I want to thank Colin and Laurel for supporting this channel over on my Patreon. And I appreciate it. It makes these classes able to happen. And it's nice that you do that. So thank you for that. And if you want to learn more about me and see some of my other artwork, or look at the calendar to kind of see what's going on, you can go to ihavegumption.com and you can find all that information there. All right. So, and this week I actually released a video on my tiger mural. So if you've seen that at all on social media or are interested in murals, go check that out. That came out Wednesday and it's on the channel. It kind of teaches you how to do a mural too. So if you're interested in doing big art, you can check that out. So let's see. Oh, we have a comment here. Right on, Laurel. Thank you so much. I'm glad that you guys enjoyed painting eyes, and thanks for tuning in. And give everybody a squeeze for me. And I hope you have a lovely weekend. So thanks, everybody. I think I'm going to let you go now. But if you have questions in the future, go ahead and throw them in chat, and I can answer them as they come up. So I hope you have an awesome weekend, and I will see you later. Let's see, maybe I'll see you later. Can't operate my mouse.